Hi everybody, thanks so much for coming on. This is a really exciting bundle this month, and today we have Sian O Donnell, who's an amazing stylist, who's coming on to teach you how to do a photo shoot, or what sort of things you might need for the photo shoot, sort of the structure of it, and to talk about styling, because she's an amazing stylist. Look at her looking fabulous. Hi Sian, thanks for coming on. Please tell us a little bit about you and what you do, just to start off with.
Yeah, and so I'm Sian O Donnell. I'm a fashion and wardrobe stylist. I've been freelance now for about 3 years, so I've been on my own for then. But before then, I was at a magazine for 4 years. Started as a fashion assistant and then kind of progressed to fashion stylist. And I got into styling. I studied fashion journalism originally. But just the way it goes, kind of the interning and the assistant that you have to do after university, I naturally kind of fell into the styling side more. And kind of left the writing kind of behind, unfortunately. but yes, it's probably been about 10 years now I've been in the industry for. But yeah, so 3 years on my own, and it's it's great. Obviously, with being self-employed, there are pros and cons with everything. But on the whole, yeah, it's been great, and yeah, love what I do, which is always good to be.
Brilliant. Yeah, we all have to love what we do, don't we?
Yeah.
Carry on with it, but it keeps us going.
Exactly.
And I met you through Matt, didn't I? So you worked with him a lot, the photographer that we used for the shoot. So do you have a lot of photographers that know you and then recommend you?
Yeah, I think
that you get a lot of work.
Yeah, on the whole, obviously, yeah, mostly it is kind of recommendations, which is great. So it's people that either they find your website and they'll contact you that way, or they'll work with someone and go, oh, actually, or Sian that styled this. So a lot of it is kind of word of mouth, which is great. And also you tend to kind of work with this, like, same kind of teams, depending on what the job is, of course, which is great, because then it just feels like kind of just you're working with your friends, and it makes the job so much easier, especially when you're speaking before the shoot. Obviously it's so important to kind of get good communication going anyway with the team that you're going to work with, and if you know them, it just makes the whole job a little bit easier. But then saying that, it's always great to work with new people, because like shoot now, I'm on this from working with yourself, so there's always different areas you can go into, and depends what kind of shoots. But yeah, on the whole, it's kind of recommendations that people have worked with you before, and put your name forward, which is, yeah, it's always lovely to be thought of as a great stylist.
Yeah. Brilliant. Sorry, I just chucked that question in there. It suddenly came into my head. Extra one. Right, so the first question is, when styling a shoot, what is the first thing you need to think about? So if you've never done one before and you think, right, I need to do a photo shoot, obviously I need a photographer, I need a model, people think of that, and then they're just a bit stuck and can get a bit scared of it in a way. Yeah,
it can be, I suppose, a bit overwhelming if you've never done it before. But I think the first thing you've got to think of is who's your audience. So, if it's depending on what you're selling, obviously if it is hats, you've got to think who is that person that's going to buy your hats? What do they want to see? What is their aesthetic? Because say if you're, say for myself, say you're shooting for a newspaper, say, that reader is going to be very different to someone who's reading Glamour, for instance, or Grazia, so you've got to always imagine what do they want to see. For, say, a newspaper reader, they want some clothes that are, they can buy on the high street, they're not too expensive, they're there now, available now. So I think it's always just good to have that person in mind that you're aiming it towards, aiming the shoot towards. Say for like the shoot that we did together, obviously, the main part of it was kind of Ascot, Ladies' Day. So you've got to think of the clothes that would kind of pick up on that style, so the reader can go, oh, actually, that I can see myself wearing that. So I think it's just, imagine who it is that you want to aim the shoot towards, and just really kind of home it in as much as possible, so it doesn't look too kind of open. Because I think it's really important to have your aesthetic straight away there, so people know who you are and what you're about.
Okay, that's brilliant news. And do you think a stylist would help with that, or a stylist needs to know that from the person who's doing it? Obviously they know their customer, so they can come to you, but then they could maybe say, well, I want it to be royal, and I want wealthy clients who are maybe 40 years old, and then you would step in.
Yes, I think with all shoots, I think the basis of it at the start is to speak to the client, whether that is, you know, an owner of a brand, whether that's a producer, whether it's a, you know, an art director at a magazine. It's always having an initial conversation of what they want from the shoot. And with that, it's things like sending style boards back and forth, jumping on a phone call, Zoom call like this, just to get you're both really clear, the whole team's really clear of exactly what the shoot's for. Just so it doesn't get kind of muddled up. Even with things like, you know, hair and makeup's really important as well, because, you know, the photographer and the stylist might have a very clear-cut idea of what they want, but haven't really brought the hair and makeup team on. And on the day, it's kind of like, it's a bit of a mesh. So it needs to be really clear from the start. So that's what, the first step would be to have that conversation with the client and find out exactly what they want. And that's why smooth boards are really great for that. So you can kind of go back and forth and go, I like this, maybe less of this, more of this. So it's just very clear cut, but straight from the start. So, you know, people all know what you're doing.
So you need model, you need photographer, you need stylist, you need makeup artist, and hopefully they can do hair as well.
Yeah, definitely, because I think some people almost don't book hair and makeup, especially if they've got, you know, smaller brands with, you know, less kind of money to be able to get people on board. But I do think hair and makeup is so important. You know, we can all kind of do our own face, you know, but I think for a photo shoot, you can tell the difference between someone that's done it themselves and someone that's had a professional. It just looks so much more slick. So it is worth, if you can, just to get someone that can, you know, it's just more slick and it looks much more professional, which is always, it's worth it, especially if you're selling your own brand as well.
And you've got to find a good one, haven't you? Somebody that you check out their work, make sure that you're happy with what they're doing, and once you find them, you'll probably stay with them because you sort of like them.
Exactly. You move on and move with them, and that's why, you know, like things like Instagram now is so great for this, because it's also visual, so you can go on someone's page and just see straight away if their work is for you or not. You know, it's right there. You don't really have to do much searching now, so it's much easier to find.
Yeah, and you're right with the mood boards, give it to everyone and try and figure everything out beforehand, because if you turn up on the day and you're not sure how the hair's going to go, and then the makeup artist says, how do you want it? And then you think, oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah. And also you might say something like you want a beehive site, but obviously a beehive can be up here, can be up here. There's so many different variations. So just having that kind of mood board style line, so you can all see exactly what you mean. It's all just very clear, and also on the day, it's, you know, you only have, say, the studio or location for, you know, this amount of hours. So if everyone's clear from the start, it just makes the time just go flowing so much easier, and you get which is always good.
Yeah, thanks. And what would be your process? So what would you do? First of all, obviously you get the mood board from the person, you have a chat with them.
So it really depends what kind of shoot it is. So say if you're working for a brand, say a hat brand, then you'll send the board over initially, see what they like, and if everything's kind of confirmed, then you can go back sourcing the clothes. So the process with sourcing can kind of vary. You know, brands will lend, but they lend when they get something from it. So if you're doing an editorial, obviously they love it because they've got a credit in the magazine or newspaper or whatever it is. If you're styling a singer or actress, they'll tag on Instagram. Normally they have a big following, so that they're happy with that. So if it can be quite hard, especially for newer brands, to get brands on board to kind of go with it, because at the moment they're not really getting anything from it. So at the start, it may be a case of if you do know anyone that you can borrow clothes from, or it's a case of just buying. You know, there's so many great kind of stores out there that are kind of reasonable and you can buy and return, which I know stores are like, oh, you actually do that, but you know, that's what stylists are always going down Oxford Street returning all their product. So but if you can get in with a brand from the start, and you know, even if it's a local brand from near you, a clothing store, and you can tag them on Instagram or whatever, you know, Facebook, whatever site that you use for social media, that's always great from the start to get into that. But for myself, it really varies. You know, if I do an advert, say, an advert you can't use any branding. So in that case, the producer and the team will give me a budget to buy and return. But then if it is a editorial, then you can contact PRs and go, this is my mood board. What have you got? What product have you got? What clothing have you got? Accessories that will kind of complement the style. So it really varies depending on what the shoot is. But my advice, for anyone, if you're starting out with shoots, then yes, you can get anyone that has, if you've got like a store near you or a connection somehow, just to get on board. So that's always great to kind of go together and to like work together if possible.
Yeah, that's good advice, thank you. And we've already sort of discussed, but what do you need from a client? So obviously you need the mood board. Is there anything else that you need?
Yeah, so mood board also, again, I'm kind of being quite broad with the shoots, not just for say styling with brands, but things like sizes as well for models, because obviously, you know, if you're styling an editorial, or like with what we did, it was from a model agency, so they're kind of sample size, so it's kind of clear cut. But like, say if you are doing a fashion feature that are using women that are different sizes, or an advert where there's big cast or music video and then all different heights and sizes, it's really good to get all that information straight away, because you think it'll be really easy to get that, but it's it can take, for some reason it can be very delayed of getting all that kind of vital information. And then it makes the styling, obviously you're on your bit of a back foot because you're kind of a bit delayed with the prep work. So I'd say once you've got the clear cut idea of what you want, make sure you know the sizes. Also budgets as well. I think some people don't confirm budgets straight away, because obviously money can be a bit of an awkward subject, as you know, can be, what's the budget for you? But actually it's so important to kind of get that kind of confirmed from the start, just so you know, especially if you're buying product for the shoots, or if you're buying things like props as well. Props can be really expensive, but they can make a shoot look amazing. So it's always just good to have a budget breakdown right from the start.
Okay, yeah, because it can get out of hand, can't it? It can be very
expensive. Really can, yeah. Especially if you have a mood board that, we all dream for having, this amazing set and what have you, but obviously budgets, depending on what they are, you have to kind of be realistic as well. And you can so easily get carried away and go, oh, you'll get everything in, and then at the end you're really out of pocket. Especially if you're, a newer brand, it's just so important just to be clarify straight from the start what that is. And also for the team as well, so they all know exactly what they're getting, or, and also from even now I do like test shoots, which is when the teams will like email each other. So like me and Matt, for instance, will say, we've got this idea for a shoot, let's shoot it, use a makeup artist that we know, and then we'll try and get it published after the shoot. With that, obviously no one's getting paid, but we all know we're getting something from it, because we're doing a shoot that we want to do and it's for our website, or we'll get it into a magazine that we like. So as long as everyone's on the same page, that they're from the start of what we're getting out of it, it's really important. Because I've been on a few shoots where it's all just been a bit messy, and it just leaves a bit of a weird atmosphere as well between the team, which you don't really want as well on the day.
Yeah, because so those sort of things then you don't have to pay for, because nobody's charging, are they? Which is great if you just a couple of hacks, or you just want one maybe shot, then
there are ways around it. I think people will work for free if they're getting something from it. If they're going to get some great shots to use on their website, Instagram, then that's fine. As long as everyone's aware from the start of what they're doing, and they're all okay with that, then that's absolutely fine.
So you could do a couple of those. Oh, it's a bit noisy. Maybe when you're working with people, you could do a couple of those a year. But then if you also need to do your own collection pieces, and your own, say, 10 pieces, that then has to be paid for by you, isn't it? This is different. So you do, I do 2 suits a year, which I would pay for all myself, everyone. And then also, and now and again, I might get stylists coming in for things, which is great, which means I'm not paying for that, but I'm going to get great shots from it. So we need to don't we, all year?
Clarification of what, if they're prepared to do that. But I think if you're selling, I think that's when you need to pay your team, because obviously it's for commercial benefit. So it's just it's kind of a bit of a grey area. But I think definitely if you're selling, then it needs to be paid for. But I think more creative works, editorial, things like that, it can be, there can be movement within that, as long as all the team are fine with that and they're all getting the same kind of.
You can't bring all your whole collection along if someone says we're doing a shoot. Don't bring your whole collection. You're not going to get all of that done. But a lot of people
do. It's easily, a lot of people do take the mickey. But so I think it's just really important with the whole process, being really clear from the start of what it is that you're offering.
And how would you actually approach, just say if somebody was thinking, okay, I really like this stylist and I'd love to do just a test shoot with her. I wonder if you're doing any soon, or is that okay for them to ask? How would they go about that? Because it could seem as a bit rude unless they know you already. So is it just building connections and then?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, normally if I do a test shoot, it's more with a photographer, say that I maybe I've admired for a while and they get in contact with me, or vice versa. And it's like, let's do a shoot together and see how it works. I think that's fine. I think it's a bit trickier maybe if it's from a brand point of view, because again, going down the whole commercial for the website, it's for commercial benefit. So I think it's always worth, like everything, it's always worth asking, because especially if a stylist loves a collection, they might be like, yeah, I'd happily do that. One afternoon, do a few shots with like particular products. There's always with anything, it's always worth dropping that person a message, and especially now with social media, it's so easy just to do that.
Just say what I'd love to do.
Yeah, just really, I love your work. I if you have a brand, or if you're a photographer, if you're a makeup artist, you just say, I love I love your website, I love your Instagram and the shots. Would you be prepared to blah, 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 what you're after? I mean, all they can say is no or not reply. But, if it's always worth asking.
And really, it's also about building the relationship with the photographer then, and with the stylist, and not just going straight to them, maybe sort of getting to know them on Instagram, liking their work, and then slowly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's it's networking, isn't it? It's the new networking of liking and sharing each other's work. So yeah, I think it's always worth asking. You don't.
You also
it's always
work on Facebook. Do you go into stylist groups on Facebook and find people that way to work with?
I do. The only I use that for is maybe I've used a site for assistants. If I'm looking for an assistant, there's a few sites on there for that. But apart from that, I don't really use Facebook for work, really. For me, it is mainly Instagram that I'll connect with people on, and then Pinterest as well. I use for mood boards and to get ideas together. But so they're probably the two main ones that I use. Facebook, not so much for me.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting. And okay, so could you show us some examples? I know you've got some. Show us examples of what you need from a client, i.e. mood boards, things like that. I'll just share my thank you. Okay.
Yeah, so the mood boards can be
Sorry, one second. Sound just sounds a bit funny. Let's turn it down slightly. Okay, try again.
So mood boards can differ depending on the type of job that you're being booked for. So for instance, this one was, I'll just share this now. So this was for a singer called Stella that I was styling. And we spoke on the phone. I can't remember how we connected. It might have been on Instagram. I'm not sure now. And we spoke on the phone, and then I put this board together. She gave me a rough idea of what she wanted. So I put this board together. Mainly the shots on here I've found on like Instagram, Pinterest. But with anything with mood boards, it doesn't really matter where you get your ideas from. It could be product, it could be interiors, it could be nature, it could be anything. It's whatever that kind of sets a scene for what you're after. So obviously this mood board is very kind of fashion heavy, it's all very stylized. It's really very fashion focused. That's what the singer was after, and she was that's what she liked. But then say with something like, say a client, this is for a music video, I style. So I'm going to show you this one first. For this singer. So the production company got in touch with me, and it was for this artist here, Infidel, and they asked me to style his music video. So first of all, they sent me all the cast, which is really important, especially when it's a big job where it's not just one person, it's a whole team of people. And as you can see, there's quite a few different people. So it's all their sizes, pictures of them, their heights, everything. So straight away, I know exactly. Okay, I can refer back to it for the style deck. And then they sent me the style deck of all the references that they were after. So this is for a music video. So it's all very kind of loud print, a lot of jewelry. But then straight away, I can reference this and then the cast as well. So I know exactly, it's all, again, very clear from the start of what they're after and say what the sizing is. And then another one she did recently, this is for a shoot for a newspaper, and the photo editor booked me, gave me one reference. So she then asked me to put just a board together briefly, just to quickly clarify exactly what we're after. And because it was for newspaper, it was all high street. So all this product on here are from high street stores. So all this product can be found straight away. So, you know, you get a bit of feedback, and if they want everything, I can actually get all of that. It's not kind of, you know, references where you'll try and find something similar. So again, it depends on what you're shooting, and again, your audience as well. So for newspaper, it's going to be much more high street and reasonable and affordable. And then I don't know if I've got anything else here. And then this is more of a commercial job. This is a Shaw for Sky Sports advert. And this, again, it's very brief. It's just brief location, wardrobes, and I had to go back and find, because obviously with adverts you can't use no branding, so I had to go and find football kits that had no branding. I think it's here, was it? Yeah. So again, it's putting it into a board. And with adverts and commercial jobs, they're very particular. So they'll sign off one, but then they'll go back and want something a little bit different. They're very, very particular of what they need. So again, it's so important just to clarify exactly what is needed from the start. Especially when it's all over email and it's a new team as well. It's just, and there's quite a lot of people involved as well in commercial jobs. It's just much easier just to make sure everyone can sign it off and it's clear. So if you don't have certain things on the day that they thought you were going to bring, you could go, well, actually, you didn't, you know, nothing was confirmed on that board. I bought everything that was here. So it just makes it a bit more easier, especially on bigger jobs where there's so much going on. So yeah, they're the kind of, just a few examples of the kind of different boards.
Thank you. Make sure that they're just telling you everything. You've got everything for everybody else as well. So if it was somebody who was a little less well known, who was just starting out, they would need maybe something on Pinterest, or do you think they should put it into a PDF like that?
Yes, I think just PDFs are great. Yeah, to get anything you can find, put it into board, and just send it to PDF and just get it sent off. Sometimes even if they don't ask for it, I just send it anyway. Just because, like, going back to what I said earlier, sometimes they presume, if I say, you know.
Sorry, the shop is on the high street. It's getting noisy. Say that again.
So what was I saying? Yeah, so I think boards, even if they don't ask for boards, I think it's just really important to get one together anyway and to send it, because going back to what I said earlier, like with the beehive reference, you know, someone might say, I want colour pop fashion, you know, and they think, oh, that's really kind of self-explanatory, but actually that could be, you know, quite a few different variations of that. So it's always good just to have a style reference that you can all refer back to on the shoot.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then they'd need the pictures, like I suppose the pictures of the models then with their height, their waist, hips, if you're doing that, all that information. Then you could have some maybe references to the hair, references to the makeup, maybe some inspiration from other people that you quite like who've done a shoot, and make sure it's all tailored around your customers, what they're looking for. So if we're going for royal, if we're going for ladies who lunch, who've got a bit of money, sort of look, where you want to get into. Do you want to get into certain magazines or a Royal Ascot magazine or something? Then it needs to be a certain look, doesn't it? And get all that together onto a PDF, send it to you, and then you would have a look at that. And would you then make any changes yourself or add things in for the client?
Yeah, I mean, if a brand say something to me, I would maybe put a few little extra things that I think personally, you know, or maybe we could try a few more of these, or you know, it depends what the board, you know, if you feel like there needs to be suggestions, then I think it's always worth making them, you know. And if you have, and then you might go back to the brand, and the brand might go, actually no, we don't want to do that. So, you know, it's just about having that conversation, and just being really open for what you're both after as well.
Yeah, okay. And if they were going to do it on their own and not use a stylist, they still need to do all of this, like we said, because they need to tell the photographer, need to tell the makeup.
Exactly. I think it's just really important, just to have everything there. So you're just on the same page, because also the photographer needs to know what direction, you know, because they might do it very like fashion and, you know, editorial, which actually, say for your brand, is not right, because you're trying to, the clientele is going to be a bit more, like you said, late to lunch, it's going to be a bit more proper, like conservative, maybe a little bit more. You know, depending on what the vibe of the shoot is. It needs to be really clarified from start, just so everyone's just very clear.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, okay. And if they were going to do it themselves and get their own clothes, then how do you pick the right clothes for a shoot? So obviously they've got an idea of what they're going to look for, but they high street, like you said, was newspapers, and then if they want high-end magazines, they might go a little bit more luxury. But if it's difficult to go to a PR, do they then, how would they go about sort of finding things? Is it just looking online, looking at?
Yeah, I think we're so lucky now that everything is, at our fingertips, and there's so much research you can do online, or it was a great high street. I know everything's kind of closing as we speak, really, sadly, but there's so much availability out there that high street stores, your Zara's, do amazing, incredible pieces that could really work and get that aesthetic. But it's also worth following brands on Instagram. A lot of designers that are starting out will happily lend clothes because they want any exposure. So it's just about finding those brands. And I think sometimes, because we've got a directory called Diary Directory, or like Fashion Monitor, which you pay for, you pay for monthly, and you get everything, every brand, or mostly every brand, PR details, which are great. But I think the way the industry is going for the last few years, that is great, but it's also just as important just to message brands direct on Instagram. It's so much easier to actually get that direct connection. And like you said earlier, it's all about building relationships. If you build a relationship with a brand and they like what you do, then they'll be, they won't have any problem with lending a couple of clothes, or accessories for your shoot. So it's just about building that relationship up, and definitely follow, especially up and coming designers, because they'll definitely be much more open to lending.
Yeah. I had a stylist in this morning. It just randomly rang me last night and said, I need it for today. She's doing a shoot for a sunglasses brand in France, and she saw me through another designer that I'd worked with and came across to my Instagram and then rang me. So it's all, people are always looking, aren't they? And
and it makes it kind of cuts out the middleman as well, doesn't it? If they just contact you directly, because some PRs can be a little bit funny about brands, say, being used for certain publications or certain people. You might have a celebrity that's a soap actress, which maybe a brand doesn't want to use for, lend for, sorry. But sometimes if you go direct to the brand, they actually, especially smaller brands or more up and coming, they're actually much more, they want to lend, and maybe the PR is kind of keeping them from lending. So it's always worth contacting them direct as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and you just mentioned, just made me think, what was it called again? Fashion Monitor?
Yeah, it's Diary Directory of Fashion Monitor.
Directory, yeah. That's it, yeah. Diary Directory, don't pay, do you? I was thinking of another one. Director, yeah. But I thought they were just listing, so you could see if events are on in London that certain people go to. I didn't know they listed brands as well.
Yeah, so you pay a monthly subscription that you pay for, and you just type in, not every brand was on there, but all your main ones are.
Not smaller brands. This wouldn't be good for the academy. You don't think this would be good for the academy, for people in the academy, members, to maybe pay and sign up and then just get their name on it if stylists are looking at it?
Yeah, it could be worth, because it's brand, but it's also stylists, makeup artists, photographers on their agencies. So it's definitely worth. I think it's like £60 a month, roughly. I can't remember exactly. So you get the email newsletter, which you were just speaking about, but then if you pay the extra, you actually get everyone's details, contact details, phone numbers, addresses. So for me, for returning clothes, it's great because you've got all the addresses and all the information on there. But then but if you've got your own brand, it could also be useful, because it's got a list of stylists and what have you that you might not even be able to find on Instagram. Because obviously it's quite an open world on there. It's quite hard to really kind of niche into what you're after.
Okay, because if stylists like you are on there, then are looking for people, then they might get more of a chance. I was in there a couple of times because my PR got me in there when I did events. So I had a big event in the shop, then we get it into diary directory. But that you can do for free, can't you? So people can, they're not thought about before, get themselves get the event listed on there if it's big enough.
Yeah, no, of course, because I think if they have the daily newsletter, and obviously all the main kind of brands up on the the start of it, but everyone gets listed, so it's definitely worth having a look and seeing if it's worth for your brand to be on there, and if it's if it's worthwhile. But all exposure is good.
Yeah.
So it's looking.
Yeah, that's interesting. Never thought of that. Okay, so what happens just quickly with clothes once you've borrowed them? You have to look after them really well, because if you're going to return them and they get any makeup or anything on it, just what happens? Because if you're doing it yourself, normally in a lot of my shoots when I was doing it myself, I would just have bare naked shoulders, but I think having those clothes helps the client identify with the hat and just changes it a little bit, adds something to it. So it is really good to have clothes. And I've borrowed clothes from other people, and then I worried about getting makeup on it.
Yeah, of course. Because as long as you're, like you said, you're very careful, and if you do, especially for things like, say, music videos or, say, some advert, there's a lot of, say, dance and movement in them. So it's kind of, you are going to get maybe a little bit of makeup on the collar. So it's, maybe ask the brand or check it that you can dry clean and pay for
Okay,
it.
that's the right way.
It's fine. As long as you send it back the way it was, lent out, then, if you can dry clean them or, get it off, then they're quite happy with that. Because most of them are samples. The only time it can get a little bit trickier is if you borrow shop stock. So if you borrow, say, Selfridges or Harrods or whatever, you've got to keep the labels on. You've got to make sure they're pristine. So that is when it can be a little bit trickier with, say, like a white jumpsuit. with
you just end up in the bit.
Yeah, which is understandable. It's the cost and everything as well. So it depends, but just make sure you obviously look after it, and just be careful as well with if you've got to pin anything, because obviously they do leave marks. So it's always just make sure everything you do, you're thinking ahead of what's gonna leave, what mark is it gonna leave, and to be aware with that. And obviously with COVID at the start, a lot of them you send the clothes back and they're in like quarantine for like 10 days. So it's kind of has changed a little bit how the process goes, because there's a lot of it it's a bit more time consuming, because obviously you're making sure everything's really safe and clean and everything, and in like clear bin liner kind of bags, not bin liners, clear bags. Like with the whole world with what's going on, COVID has changed things slightly. But in terms of returning, if you do buy, you just make it's like returning anything, is make sure that it's the way you found it is the way you're going to return it. So just always think ahead of what you're doing.
And if you're going to borrow something from Harrods, then make sure you can afford to pay for it if it does get ruined.
Borrow anything white, basically.
But I think quite a lot of things like Zara, you can get some quite nice things that could actually look unusual in the shoot.
Yeah, High Street I just think British High Street is amazing, and a lot of the High Street kind of will have what you're after for tell it for the price. Especially if you're just starting out, you can maybe afford to buy maybe one amazing dress from Selfridges, say, and then you return it or what have you. But on the whole, you're not going to be able to afford to buy different options, because with on the day, like with what we experience, you have a array of clothes and you kind of do go through it quite quickly. It's always good to have options in the day. So it might be great to purchase that one expensive dress, but actually it's worthwhile having more options.
You actually bought more than I thought. I thought you just have a couple of tops, but you bought dresses a lot and you needed it.
Yeah. And that's another tip I'd say. I think just options, because even if you do have sign off on boards and speak to the team on the day, it can still change. It might be like, oh, actually, let's try something a bit different, or it's always just good to have a backup, because there's nothing worse if the client turns around to you and goes, have you got any of this? And you're like, oh, that's one thing I didn't really think of, which normally always happens because they expect you to have everything in the world.
Yeah. And also, so bring pins. And I noticed you had a steamer. You always steam clothes beforehand.
I normally bring my own rail, hangers.
Oh yes, rail.
Some studios don't have all that, so it's always good just to have your own kit bag that you can kind of just rely on, just in case.
So hangers, plastic bags to go over it.
Yeah, exactly.
Rail, pins.
Yeah.
Safety pins. Do you ever use those?
Yeah, and like border clips are really good for or kind of
Oh yeah,
nice shape, and also they don't leave they don't really leave marks like safety pins can on garments, so they're always good to invest in.
good idea.
And obviously all like Spank shapewear as well for underneath clothes, because obviously we feel shooting, you know, these slinky kind of dresses, it's always good obviously to have that underneath, making sure that it's all very streamlined, because you know with photography, you know, you can a lot of aftercare, so you know they can Photoshop and everything, but you know I think everyone needs to do that, make sure that on the day they're doing as much as they can to make that the actual final shot look as amazing as possible without touching it up after.
Yes, yes, I noticed that on mine. I don't think there's really any touching it up that needs to be done, because it just anyway. Most of the shoots do, they need a lot of that afterwards.
Yeah, it just makes, but also that's, you know, with photography, getting the lighting right, you know, making sure the makeup and the hair, you know, the makeup artists is looking at the screen as well and making sure to keep tweaking, because it just makes otherwise it's, you know, the photographer or whoever's doing the after part of it makes their job much harder, and sometimes it's unneeded. If everyone just you know, looks at their department and keeps an eye, then yeah, it can normally, you don't need much retouching after.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really good working with you, because you were there, you were watching it all the time, you were on it, you were checking the clothes. Normally that would be my job, I would have to be doing that. It's tiring all the time, checking the hat. You're already there before I was there. I was like, oh, this is good.
But as you know, it can change. You know, you take your eye off the ball and you look back, you're like, oh god, you know, you can see the clips from behind if they've turned, and it's a great shot, but then you can just see that. So it's always worth just keeping an eye on the monitor and making sure. You know, so obviously everyone's looking at their own department, whether it's, you know, hair, makeup, photography, styling, nails. Everyone's homing in on their part. So it should end. You know, the image at the end should be perfect because everyone's looking at their own. Should be looking at their own department.
Yeah, yeah. And you had a great screen to look at.
Yeah, exactly.
Last question, can you give us any tips on how to style them for editorial use? So if it, I know I did mine for the website, but we did a couple of editorials later on. So roller skaters going by on the South Bank. So yeah, we did sort of ones which it was just a clear background, and then we thought we'll do a little bit more edgy later on. So we started putting on more makeup.
Yeah.
And
more makeup, maybe more accessories, and also the backdrop as well, because obviously, you know, it depends what, I mean, editorial can be white background, but maybe think about maybe changing up the location. So if you have a great outdoor space, for instance, it doesn't have to be expensive and over the top, but even like a brick wall or something that may have a texture on the background, just to kind of make it a little bit more interesting to look at, especially if you do have that maybe more e-com shoot where it's kind of a plain background or a colour background and that's it. So I think maybe bringing in a bit of texture, like you said, maybe a bit more, maybe enhancing the makeup or maybe defining the makeup a little bit more, and the hair. Accessories obviously always helps, because mainly for e-com, try to keep, I would say, especially for a hat brand, try to keep the accessories to a minimum, because I think if you overdo it, you know, you're taking your eye away from what you're trying to sell.
We're doing from the neck up, aren't we? Like from the waist stuff, it's not the whole body.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all about, so the focus is the hat. And also sometimes it is different models, which I know on the day, like what we did, we booked 2 different models that had 2 kind of different looks.
Yeah.
It was a bit more commercial, and then the second one was a bit more kind of edgier, a bit more editorial, that could do a bit more of a fashion look. So that's always good to think about as well. Again, it depends on budgets, but maybe thinking about different models that you could actually have for particular shoots you're after, what you require.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. So yeah, so more edgy, more makeup. Outside is good for a bit.
Anything that's just different, like even just like a textured background, or maybe bringing like a sofa in, or you know, it just making it a bit more like a story. So it's not just a white background. It's making it visualize that story of what you're trying to show with that picture. But it doesn't have to be, you know, massive location. Like even in the studio, you can move, say, to more exposed brickwork, or you know, a plant. Like there's so many things that are in places. Like in your studio now, there'll be places that you could shoot in to make it look, you know, be like scenes of you know, of Belinda. That's the shoot in itself. You know, you really incorporate that into the look of the hat. So you don't have to spend loads of money on locations to actually get what you need.
I actually saw a Dior shoot. This lady was in a beautiful like ball gown Dior, and she was here under one of the bridges, just walking along in the water, and it was beautiful. And then they had music with it. It was like a video. I thought, oh my God, I could do that.
Especially now with the weather as well. The weather's so good. You know, there's so much like, beautiful parks and trees, or you know, there's so many interesting landscapes out there that you've got it right on your doorstep. You know, you just go out with a small team.
Is there anything that you wouldn't do, or any no-nos of being outside?
No, I mean, some places, depends where you go. Some places do will need permits. So obviously, the larger team you have, the more obvious you are that you're filming something. People can be a bit funny with certain places. I remember I went to Marrakesh once for a shoot, and the photographer didn't get a permit, but she was meant to, and that was just a nightmare with Moroccan police trying to basically nearly arrest us because we weren't allowed to space. It was quite horrific. We were there for 2 hours and they wouldn't let us go. That's because the photographer didn't plan ahead and didn't get the permit and didn't sign the paperwork. So it's also it was worth knowing where you are and what's the legality of it. But if you're just gonna take a camera out with a model and hair makeup, into a park, you'll be, I'm sure you'll be fine then.
Just check, and especially if it's a location, indoor location, you've got to check with them, obviously.
If you're abroad as well, I think just check. It's worth checking there as well. You don't get into trouble.
And say you're a new designer if you're a new designer, because they're going to treat you politely.
Personal project. If you say personal project, they don't seem to care, so that's always a good thing to remember.
I did one in the Brighton Pavilion once, and they said, come in, fine, it was all free. I couldn't believe it, because I was a student then. Now it'd probably be thousands. They know you're a brand.
Yeah, so it's always, I always pull the student card or just say it's a personal project, then you should be fine.
Okay, right, so thank you. I think that's great. So if any guys have any extra questions, I'll come back to you and just sort of come to you, but I think we've covered everything. Thank you. Have you got anything else you want to say?
I mean, like I said, if you need anything else, any questions that need answering, I'm happy to answer anything. You can go to my website. Obviously, you're going to link all my details there. But honestly, anything you want to ask, I'm more than happy to help. And I think it's just a case of just get shooting and just get your product out there, because obviously if you don't have exposure, then there's what's the point? You can make beautiful pieces, but you need people to know about it. So I would say just get shooting. Start small, start with a small team, and then then slowly expand.
Brilliant. And don't hide. Thank you.
Don't hide.
So your bio's below and information, so they can contact you. So if anybody would like to use you or call you about anything, or do you do anything like power hours where anybody would want to have a chat with you just to discuss?
It depends. Obviously, being freelance sometimes, it depends if I'm shooting, or they can go. Some days are freer than other days. But maybe just drop me like an email or on Instagram, and we can go from there and we can arrange a phone call or what have you. No problem.
Thank you so much for doing this for us. And I will have a good week, and I'll see you again soon.
Oh, great. Thank you. Bye.